Remakes are supposed to suck, everyone knows that. But here's the problem. Some of them don't. Some of them outperformed the original, outacted it, outdirected it, and in a few cases, completely erased it from history. The original Casino Royale from 1967 was a total oddity. David Niven played Bond, not the tough spy, but a retired older guy. You also had Peter Sellers, Woody Allen, and Orson Welles as the villain, and the whole thing played as a spoof, not an action film. It's more Austin Powers than James Bond. So, for a real Bond, audiences had to wait for Sean Connery's Dr. No in 1962, the first time you see that cool, iconic James Bond moment. Fast forward to 2006 and Casino Royale comes back, this time as a proper Bond reboot. Daniel Craig takes over as a completely different 007, rough, cold, more dangerous. The whole movie is centered around an extended high-stakes poker game, and the villain this time is Mads Mikkelsen, the guy who literally weeps blood. Craig's Bond is on his first real mission, he's still figuring it out, and everything feels more grounded. Eva Green shows up as Vesper Lynd, and their whole relationship gives Bond some actual depth. Her death is a turning point, wrecking Bond and setting him on a new path for the rest of the series. The original Scarface was a classic gangster movie from 1932 set in the Prohibition era. Cops, racketeering, all black and white. Brian De Palma's 1983 remake takes that framework and blows it up into something wild. Instead of prohibition, it's cocaine, and it's the Reagan era. Oliver Stone's script isn't subtle, but that's the point. He was in his own battle with addiction while writing it, and it shows. The whole movie is obsessed with greed and power. Al Pacino as Tony Montana is unforgettable. De Palma goes all in on style, slow-motion shootouts, mirrors, synths, violence that borders on absurd. Scarface never aims for realism. It's all myth, bigger than life, and it just keeps going until Tony Montana takes everything he wants and loses it all. The film got slammed when it came out, too much blood, too many F-bombs, but now it's legend. It predicted the obsession with fame, money, and self-destruction that pretty much defines American culture. What started as a remake ended up a phenomenon. Remaking True Grit should have been a disaster. John Wayne's original, he even won an Oscar for it, turned Rooster Cogburn into one of the all-time great cowboy roles. So when the Coen brothers decided to take it on, people thought it was cinematic heresy. But instead of copying the movie, they went back to Charles Portis's 1968 novel and rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up. The darker tone came back, and the story finally put the focus where it belonged, on Maddie Ross, the 14-year-old out for revenge. Haley Steinfeld took that role and turned it into something unforgettable, absolutely the heart of the movie. Where the old True Grit played things lighter, the Coen's version is all about reckoning and consequence. Jeff Bridges, playing Cogburn, never tries to be John Wayne. He just plays him as a washed-up, drunken wreck, full of regret and mumbled one-liners. His redemption feels earned, not automatic. And Roger Deakins shoots everything in dust and shadow, stripping away the 1960s polish and giving you the ugly, real West. Instead of a tribute, it's a fresh take that stands on its own. And for a lot of people, it's now the definitive True Grit. French movies have always been a goldmine for Hollywood remakes, but most of the time, something gets lost. The studios take the concept, ramp up the budget, throw in big stars, and usually miss whatever made the original special. But then there's True Lies, a remake of the 1991 French film La Totale. The original was already tailor-made for a Hollywood update, a secret agent hiding his double life as a regular guy with his clueless family caught up in the chaos. The original had plenty of charm, but it was only ever going to be a mid-level action comedy. James Cameron took the premise, dropped a $100 million budget on it, and blew it up into something bigger than anyone expected. Actual Harrier jets in the action scenes, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing comedy, a movie that never lets up. Where other American remakes usually flatten out the source material, True Lies just goes for broke, turns everything up to 11. That's why it ends up being the rare exception, one that most people remember even more than the French original. You go back to 1958, and the original The Fly is this slow-burn sci-fi mystery. A guy invents a teleportation machine, tests it on himself, and you know where it goes. He turns into a fly-human hybrid, and his wife has to kill him in the end. The story is less about the horror and more about piecing together why any of this happened at all. The pacing is pure 50s. Everything unfolds at a crawl, the acting is stiff, dialogue just kind of hangs in the air, and honestly, it shows its age. The original was a box office hit, but even back then, critics were split. Then you get Cronenberg's 1986 remake, and it's a different animal completely. Cronenberg writes it with Charles Edward Pogue, and the horror gets ramped up, hard. Seth Brundle, played by Jeff Goldblum, goes down the same path as the original scientist, but everything gets pushed further. The transformation, the body horror, the tragic love story with Gina Davis as Ronnie. What sticks with you is how personal and devastating it gets. In the end, Brundle's not just a monster, he's still got enough of himself left to beg Ronnie to end it. Most people now don't even think about the original. This is the version everyone remembers. Tim Curry's Pennywise in the 1990 miniseries is legendary, no question. People grew up terrified of that clown. The original was made for TV, it's got that old-school nostalgic vibe, and the die-hard fans still swear by it. But the 2017 remake is just operating on another level. The difference hits you in the first 5 minutes. That Georgie and Pennywise scene is way darker, more violent, and it tells you right away this isn't TV-safe horror anymore. Bill Skarsgård takes Pennywise and goes in the opposite direction from Curry. Less camp, more straight-up disturbing. The prosthetics, the effects, everything is amped up, and Skarsgård's weird physical presence makes the character genuinely threatening, not just weird. And here's the real trick. The 2017 version actually works even when Pennywise isn't on screen. The kid actors carry their scenes, the story moves, and you're not just sitting there waiting for the next clown moment. The original had its moments, but most of the time you were just waiting for Curry to show up again. This remake proved that sometimes with the right cast, the right director, and a willingness to go darker, you can actually beat nostalgia. When you say Ocean's 11, most people think of the 2001 movie, not the 1960 original, and there's a reason for that. The original is the Rat Pack in their prime: Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. They weren't really acting, just hanging out in Vegas, making the whole thing up as they went along. It's a fun watch, but you feel the looseness. One-take scenes, barely any rehearsing. The plot is just an excuse for the guys to trade jokes and drift from club to club. The vibe is cool, but looking at it now, the whole thing feels dated, especially with the old-school sexism and racism baked in. Soderbergh's 2001 version is a different animal. The remake is tight. Every shot, every joke, every music cue is engineered for maximum effect. You get Clooney, Pitt, Damon, all locked in. Brad Pitt's Rusty is constantly eating and always sharper than everyone else. Matt Damon is the rookie trying to keep up. Bernie Mac's Frank brings the perfect smooth talking edge. The entire crew actually feels like a team, each with a role that matters. That's something the original never managed. Most people today can't even name more than a couple of Sinatra's gang. Soderbergh would loosen things up for Ocean's 12, but the first remake is pure precision. Disney's remake of The Parent Trap in 1998 took everything that worked in the 1961 original and made it better with a new energy and a fresh cast. Lindsay Lohan was just 12 years old and pulled off playing both twins, Annie and Hallie, each with their own accent, background, and personality. It was her film debut, and she nailed it. Nobody forgot it. There's a reason this one is more rewatchable and loved than the original. It's funny, the characters are memorable and the performances land every time. Elaine Hendricks as Meredith Blake, the gold-digging fiancée, became an icon. Remember that camping trip prank with the lizard? That scene still gets referenced everywhere. It's not just a throwaway moment, it's part of why the film works. The chaos brings the twins' parents back together, and the family chemistry gives it real heart. Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot is the classic remake that erased the original. Most people don't even know it's based on two earlier films, one French, one German. Wilder took the bones of the old story, switched it to Prohibition-era Chicago, added a mob massacre, and went all in on the comedy. Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, this is what happens when you cast right and let the actors run. It's not just the jokes, which are still sharp, it's the entire energy of the movie. The original films are nearly impossible to find now and nobody really cares. Wilder's version is what stuck. The closing line, "Nobody's perfect," pretty much says it all. The movie itself is about as close to perfect as comedies get. Most remakes try to update the look or the tech. John Carpenter's The Thing did something different. The original, The Thing from Another World, was your standard Cold War sci-fi. Scientists versus a rubber suit monster. It worked for its time, but it's tame now. Carpenter went in the opposite direction. He sets his version in Antarctica, strips everything down to paranoia and body horror. The monster doesn't lumber around. It morphs, imitates, and infects. Rob Bottin's practical effects still freak people out. Every frame in The Thing is about mistrust. Who's still human, who isn't? Carpenter doesn't give you a happy ending, just two guys in the dark. Not sure if either of them is even real anymore. It bombed at the box office, got killed by critics, but now it's seen as a landmark for both horror and sci-fi, way ahead of its time.